I thought about that and similar things in room 203 of the student's dorm that our place had given. Jamie had given me some cup ramen and hot water. We chatted for a moment about being neighbors for a while, and then she returned to her room. Weird we could be so casual about this, considering there was a chance we wouldn't meet again tomorrow. After dinner, I took a bath. The gas boiler was pretty damn old, so learning how to use it took a while. There were some working electrical outlets too, so I could charge my phone. I didn't have a wristwatch, so that was important. By the way, my room didn't have a kitchen. I was pretty sure the other rooms didn't either. From what I could tell, no one here actually cooked or ate their own homes. At their own homes, they all relied on the dining hall to provide their meals. This settlement had not only a unique culture but a way of life as well. I couldn't help but wonder how something like this began and survived into the modern era. It was an interesting subject to research, but for now I had to worry about the fact that my life was in danger. Anyway, what were my options now? I wasn't part of the feast, but walking around at night was probably dangerous regardless. Yeah. After all, I had memories of getting killed doing exactly that. From a logical standpoint, that was probably just a dream, but it had quality to it that made it hard to believe I had to be careful until I was certain. Then again, I had a record of surviving by just not making any noise at night. Maybe I should have stayed awake and look around. Also, Takumi-san had said that they were gonna have someone keep watch at night, didn't he? Was he gonna do it himself? Considering the snake's important, he shouldn't do something so dangerous. Shit, I barely decided anything in the feast. I wasn't getting enough info either. I felt like I barely knew the basics. Talking during the feast meant giving info to the wolves, but if the humans kept too many things hidden, the wolves would end up knowing me more than them, and that was just dangerous. Still, there was a limit to what I could do in my situation. If I kept being the messenger I was today, I could create a huge imbalance of info on myself. Not to mention I could be deemed suspicious and lose the residents' trust. Shit, what was I supposed to do here? Was it best for me to just stay quiet and wait for the feast to end? That wasn't like me at all. There was some mail slot on the door. I opened it up and looked outside. Everything was still covered in the mist, so I couldn't see much. I could only see the handrail and the branches going in the hallway. But maybe I could see some intruder if I kept staring? Not likely. After all, this was a room at the end of the second floor. Haver-chan's and Shiemi's room were closer to the stairs, so I couldn't see anyone going to attack them. The only time I could see the monster would come would be it was coming for me. Maybe keeping a watch like this was the most important thing if I wanted to stay alive, but I found it hard to put on my own life on the priority list. Why I kept showing that? I know that already. For some reason, I felt like if I died, I just go back to the starting point. Actually, I'll hold your hands if I say this. Yeah, I better not think that. Anyway, I had to stay awake. I still had many things to worry and think about. Mm-hmm. 5:14. What? As I woke up and tried to move, my head rubbed against something soft and then smacked into the doorknob. I writhed in pain. What was going on? Did I fall asleep against the door? Was I more tired than I thought? I was glad I didn't die and all, but it was failure in my eyes. Sleeping in a natural position made my whole body hurt. I wobbled over to my fully charged phone. It was 6 o'clock. That was early in the morning for me. I'd have loved to just go back to sleep, but I was too curious about the feast. After washing my face with hot water and putting on my shoes, and decided to take a peek through the mail slot. What the? Outside I saw Chiemi standing there with a knife in hand. I reflexively stepped back, tripped and fell on my ass. What the hell was that? There was a woman standing before my room with a weapon. I've only caught a glimpse, but that was enough to conclude that I was dealing with a scene straight out of the horror movie. What could have prompted this? Did she suspect I was a wolf, or she was wolf herself? She knocked on the door, making me squeal a bit.
Haruaki-san, Haruaki-san, 起きてる?
Would she kill me if I replied?
ハルアキさん起きて。他のみんなの様子を見て回るから付き合ってほしいんだ。ちなみに 私は現在凶器を所持してますが、ご信用につき心配なきよ
There you go. She said it herself.
紛らわしい。
う。あ、起きてた。大丈夫大丈夫。ほら、凶器はちょっと離れたところに置きました。
I hesitantly peeked through the mail slot and saw her hoping showing me her empty hands. After meeting up with Chiemi, we went around the dorm and woke the students. All of them were alright. While they got ready, we went to the Nosato mansion just because it was close. As the mist was still misty and unpleasant sight, I walked carefully, just like yesterday morning. I couldn't write off the possibility that the werewolf would jump out of the mist and tear me apart. It would be over for me. I was walking ahead, dragging Chiemi by the hand, carefully about where I was going. If something happened and I got eaten or something, Chiemi could either fight back or run away.
誰かいるのか。あ、野里さん、夫妻子とちえみちゃんです。どこだ。そこか。
We peered through the mist and the gloomy frown appeared.
いやー、どうも。
屋敷は大丈夫だったみたいですね。当然だろう。屋敷には古臭いながらもセキュリティ設備が設けられている。
そっか。じゃあみんなで避難させてもらえます？
なぜそんなことをせねばならんのかね。これは安水の問題だろう。
そっか、そうですよね。じゃあ安水の問題解決のためとっとと下に降りて待
ちたまえ。急ぎ動かないと危険だろう。
Really, I was beginning to think this guy was the best described as all bark, no bite. Though prideful and vain, he wasn't as smart as he claimed to be, as shown by his inability to take charge of the feast. Also, his fussy attitude was probably just him making up for his fear. It was entirely possible he was just putting on an air and that the mystery of Yasumizu, or rather Fujiyoshi, was actually scaring him. Anyway, we went down the hill and met up with the students.
慣れた道でも不気味なもんだね。
だね。霧って不思議だ。
これなら脱いでも怒られない。
やめろ、バカ者。
Makishima was acting weird. Mochi was definitely expecting a retort from her. She didn't say anything, and her face was so pale you could tell through the mist. Hanging her head, she was slightly shaking. Everyone else could see it too, but no one chose to address it. Questions would quickly become suspicions after all. Perhaps she was a wolf and did something horrific last night. As we all thought similar things, she suddenly collapsed to the ground.
大丈夫か、はるちゃん。
触らないで。
Her hoarse scream shocked everyone.
はるちゃん。
兄ちゃん、違う。ごめん。だけど、今は。
うん、そうだよね。神経質にもなるよ。足元に気をつけて。
We then slowed down, Habu-chan not touching anyone's hands but at the rear of the group. As we walked, trees and stones drifted in and out of visibility through the surrounding mist. Our visions were so limited it felt like the world around us was changing with every step we took. A tunnel of trees, a part of the paddy field, and a stone platform, a concrete stairway. We walked between realms every passing second. I was still wondering about Haru-chan. What was on her mind? Was she afraid or worried? After descending for a bit, we arrived at the plaza.
みんな無事ね。
We met two more people in front of the dining hall.
ご老人方は。
ばあちゃんは身支度中だ。体調が良くねえらしい。これから来てねえ連中のところを回る。ピオ、お前はついてこい。
なぜ君が私に命令する？
男手がいるかもしれねえからだ。夫妻子、悪いがあんたも頼むぜ。
This was the first time he'd ordered me to do something, but it wasn't a situation where I could be happy about him relying on me.
ええ、もちろん。
Maybe he'll show up a body again. He probably had a bad feeling, namely that he wouldn't be able to rely on a certain someone ever again. As I passed by Kaori-san, I heard her whisper.
あのね、安永、ちょっといい？
何？母さん。
義継を探してほしいの。離れにいないようだから。
Who's Yoshitsutsu again? Is this one of his sons? The rebel one? Everyone probably had a better feeling about this. The three of us guys checked the houses. Tsunaga, Kunchi, Emi, and Mochi walk around the settlement. We agreed to split up and start searching. The misty village was silent. I couldn't hear anyone chatting. I'd seen these buildings from the outside, but it was my first time actually walking in. The shabby buildings built using blackened planks were more or less buried in vegetation. Some were on the verge of collapse. The way of their frames jutted from the mist reminded me of the carcasses of giant beasts. I walked on the line between the grass and footpath surely. I often heard something small jump in the grass. It was probably just some bugs or frogs, but still made me flinch.
リカ子さんはここに住んでいるのだったか。
ああ、そこんちだ。
くそ。なんだって彼女がこんな場所に住まねばならん。
お前が知らねえんだったら俺らが知るわけねえだろ。身車あたりの指図じゃねえのか。
私が知る限りでは彼女が休みずに移ったのは自主的とのことだがね。
ひょっとしたら霧が立つんで魔除けのまじないでもしに来たんじゃねえか。無駄だったがよ。
室匠、私ならともかく彼女相手にあんまり口が過ぎるんじゃないかね。相手は上藤吉の長者の正当だぞ。
知るか、ここは安水だ。あいつ自分で言ってたろうが、宴になりゃみんな食われんだよ。
リカ子さん、リカ子さん、ご無事ですか。
Apparently, Takumi-san didn't like the Uematsu family, or the four-head families in general. Now that I thought about it, though she wasn't as disliked as Kiyonetsuke, the villagers in general weren't fond of Rikaku Uematsu. Seems like a pretty obvious outcome though. Yasumizu was a settlement for the ostracized. It was impossible for a member of one of the head families to openly spurn them to form a good relationship with the locals. Rikaku-san emerged before too long. She was wearing her usual strange getup, and she didn't seem any different from how she looked yesterday.
メイコを連れて行きませんと。
We move on to the next house. It felt like Rikaku-san was urging me, so I woke the girl up.
メイコちゃん、朝だよ。
Well, I couldn't imagine Rikaku-san raising her voice, while the other two probably didn't feel like they had to get involved with the girl. After a few calls, she finally came out, still half asleep. Meh?
メイコ、よかった。
キヨ、二人を食堂まで連れて行ってやれ。
リカ子さん、こちらへ。足元に気をつけて。
はい。
She was apparently trying to get my attention, so I turned around and said yes.
ごめんなさい。
Her sudden apology left me completely confused. She then departed alongside the other two, leaving me alone with Takumi-san. What's that about? What was that?
いいんですか、清之助さんがいなくて。
どうせ役に立たねえ。植松の坊主もどきがくたばってたら運ばせようと思ってたけどよ。
It'd be useless anyway. I only brought him along in case it was the Uematsu's mob business that died.
もう誰がやられたか分かったから。
Damn.
まだ狼じじい氏の可能性も。
適当言うな。おやっさんが生きてたら誰より早起きしてとっくに休みずを3週くらいはしてるっつんだ。
Oh man, he's on edge.
すまねえ。奥野がおやっさんの家だ。
I followed him in silence. I couldn't think of anything to say. The fact that the door was unlocked made it clear that something wasn't right. The moment I opened it, my nostrils were assaulted by a smell. Oh, his face just centered in the reek of fresh Oh, dang it, he really is. Oh, dang it. I, unlike Takumi-san, who was looking away and cursing, I did my best to burn the scene I witnessed into my memory. Please don't show it to me. Please keep it to yourself. I would like to avert my eyes. I would be disrespectful and chided myself for wanting to look away. Keep it to yourself, okay. His body was much more intact than Mamiya-san and Hashimoto-san. That made it much easier to become painfully aware of the fact that this was a human, an intelligent life form who was with us yesterday like it was no big deal. There was one problem though. The part of the body that used to be head was completely destroyed. Oh gosh, there was no part of the head left untouched. It was that Doro. It's obvious the result of relentless heavy blunt attacks. Everything above the neck was just strange flat mass of shattered skull fragments with organic matter. Compared to it, everything else was largely unharmed. The old-looking clothing and unexpectedly robust chest for someone his age. Oh, him! I thought the Okami's gonna come. I thought that was the one that's. Oh, it's him. Jeez. Oh, where all the proofs needed to know that this was the body of Kanzumaki Shimashi. Also, that's why
片
Haru
付けるんで
is
すか？
not feeling well. They're related, right? そうだ。
当たり前だろ。
少しだけ時間をください。
どうする気だ？
できる限りのことを調べます。
Yes, we had no idea when we could get out of here. Protecting the scene of the crime for an official investigation meant we had to leave this body to rot here, and we just couldn't do that. And considering the horrible state it was in, the villagers probably wanted to take care of it own way as soon as possible. Not much I could do to stop that. Thus I did my duty to someone without such obligations. This corpse is completely unlike the ones from yesterday. While those two were destroyed completely, the damage on this one was focused on the head. The weapon clearly wasn't sharp. They used something blunt. Weapon? Isn't the wolf? Like... what? Skin on his face was torn but not sliced apart, and his skull was shot. Stop describing it! I already know he's dead. That's enough. Discuss by repeat. Oh gosh, stop! It wasn't my job to picture whether there was a profound crunch in this. The only clear thing here was that the wolves killed him using something blunt, not claws or fangs. So are you telling me that the wolves is still human when they kill someone because they're using blunt objects and not their own, like, claws or teeth or whatever it is? It was obviously done with dedicated intent, not accidentally. At the very least, the entity that made this corpse wasn't the same as the one that made the ones from yesterday. Huh. It made sense if she separated them and assumed that yesterday was the corruption and today's was the wolves. Oh. Okay. Because, like, the corruption is, like, the entity, right? But the wolves is just human. Is that, am I getting this right? Yeah, that's the corruption. But the thing I've seen when I was walking around at night, the time I had the appearance of a wolf. Or rather, a werewolf. The werewolves were the ones bringing the corruption. The tale of all this was based on would make it even less. If the corruption was Great Lord Shina, the mountain god's punishment, it'd be weird for it to be delivered by the wolves. Holding back my nausea, I looked back at the corpse. Then I rolled back my sleeves and reached for the destroyed head.
おい、何を？
ないと思いますが、一応調べます。
Decapitation meant body doubles, mystery writing 101. Huh? What? If someone brought in and killed a person with a similar build to Kanzoshi's, then left him here, his death could easily be fake. What?
肝臓さん、下顎に銀歯ありました。
いや、ねえよ。
His voice was strangely forced. I looked at him and realized he was kinda pale. I might have overdone it. Still, I couldn't be stopped in this situation.
おやっさんは60過ぎて差し歯も何にも入れてねえの自慢してたから。
Huh.
あったのか？
いえ、誘導を避けるための質問です。健康な歯がびっしりですよ。
なんだよ。
Oh. The lower jaw was mostly intact, with the upper one destroyed along with the rest of the head. Despite that, I saw a hint of the old man in the eyebrows and the dark hair with the streaks of the gray in them. It was pretty clear it was the one and only Kanzamaki Shimiyoshi, so it was probably pointless to keep thinking about the way he was injured. My hands were all messy, I'd have to wash them later. The corpse aside, Kanzushi was lying on some thin bedding and there was no sign of a struggle. He was either instantly killed by the first attack or knocked out, laid here and then killed. Still, it wasn't a corpse that was easy to make. The situation here was peculiar. One point I found curious was the fact that Kanzushi surely obeyed the shelter law and locked himself in. However, the lock of the door was still perfectly intact. So logically speaking, Kanzushi had opened the door and let the culprit in. There was no sign of resistance, so it was probably done by someone he felt safe with. Huh. However, if this was a normal killing by the standards of the Feast of the Yomi Purge, then this was definitely made possible as something unnatural. Back to the situation at hand, the futon and everything around it were bloody, obviously, but there was another strange thing about the crime scene. The dampness. Some spots were really wet and clearly not because of the mist. That's like the murderer purposely spread some water here. Were they trying to wash away the blood splatter on them, but there was no point in doing it in front of the body. The footprints were faded. Were they trying to cover their tracks? They were still pretty visible though. It is more like they put bloody footprints on the futon than tatami that was already wet. The shape of the prints told me they weren't made by Western shoes, so Japanese clogs or wild beasts. They were just long ovals reminiscent of those made by Zori sandals. There weren't many of them though, most of the blood was absorbed by the futon. But from what I could tell, there was only one type of footprint.
何か分かったのかよ。
大したことは。
だろうな。あんた別にそっちの専門家じゃねえんだろう。
ええ、残念ながら。
All I knew was the culprit was a dangerous, very human. As I washed my hands, Takumi-san removed the sliding door and put Kanzo's remains on it. He covered his destroyed face with a nearby hand towel and prepared to carry it.
後ろ頼む。
了解です。
We lifted it up, and yeah, this was definitely a job for two people. I went out into the mist.
皿長に捨てるんですか？
ばあちゃんはそうしろって。
そうしなければ汚れると。
ああ。
A voice devoid of life. Couldn't call out to him, pushing him any further was dangerous. I could tell by the air about him.
俺のせいだ。
どうしてです？
俺が宴でヘマやったから。
That was entirely possible. This proved that he was aware of it himself. I would have said that, but it felt wrong.
僕にはよくわかりませんが、少なくとも匠さんがご自分なりにベストを尽くそうとされてるように見えますよ。
だからって失敗したら何にもならね
え。じゃあ取り返さないとですね。これからは多分あなたが安水をまとめていくことになる。
俺には無理だ。
Well, I couldn't either. I was just an outsider, so I had no idea how to console him. Feeling powerless, I reapproached the dining hall. I passed by here and go straight for the graveyard. Tai Yamawaki-san had come out too. She is in the midst of prayer. Kaorio Bibi was standing next to her. She looked completely out of it. Mikako Uematsu was covering Meiko's eyes, looking straight at me. Habu-chan, Kazu-chan's actual daughter. Kazu-chan's... what? Was watching her grandfather's corpse with an intense expression. It probably wasn't good to make any assumptions here, but I couldn't help it. I felt like her expression was full, not of unbearable sorrow, but of anger, hatred, and disgust. I've never seen them in nice chat, so I wouldn't have been surprised if they didn't see eye to eye. But still, I'd have liked it if she made a different expression, if only for this moment. I could only think that it's because I was an outsider who didn't know shit. It wasn't good to make assumptions. Shit. Why was I in the position? Just how much could I even learn in my position? But as it turned out, I was still underestimating the situation.
ヨシ君がどこにもいない。
We met Chiemi on the way to the graveyard. She and the two high school guys were still searching, but the mist made it extremely difficult. I saw her rejoin once we buried Kanza and pick up on our base. The graveyard wasn't that far. Yasumisa wasn't very big. It only felt like it caused mist or the land. Oh my freaking gosh. Hi! Completely forgotten about him. He was alright too, huh? I had no idea why, but he was looking at us, clapping and laughing. Oh my gosh. That meant that Yoshitsugu Obibe-kun was the only one he hadn't seen yet. I was sure there'd be only one. The wolves were supposed to kill only one person per night. Only one per wolf, maybe? Not saying a word, I heard to finish the job. That led us to finding him early. Oh! Now this is corruption, right? Yoshigitsuku was the shortest path to the cliff on the grass of the graveyard. Oh, this is sick. Yoshitsugu was the shortest path to the cliff in the grass of the graveyard. Though Takumi-san had only noticed him by chance, that was how deep in the grass he was, and how many pieces of him were there. It reeked of death too, but it was mixed with smell of trampled grass and a strange beastly odor. Maybe not all blood around here was his. Unlike Kansa-san, he left clear proof of a tough battle and intense pain.
よしお前根性あった
What
よ
have happened here? Takumi-san's voice was shaking. He picked up the soccer ball-sized object. Half-eaten and basically a shadow of what it used to be, it clenched its teeth, even in death. What? What? Are we talking about the head?
いいですか
Takumi-san gave it. Yoshitsugu head. Okay, it's a head. So me and I put in my finger in its mouth. I was curious about what was stuck in there. What I found was a dump of beast liver. Oh, he really did fought. A good fight. He literally fought tooth and nail, resisting until the very end. Damn, how would you fight that beast? Resisting what? Obviously, the being that brought the corruption. It didn't take long for the news of Yoshitsuki of Ibe's death to spread across the village. I'd heard that the pain of losing one's child was beyond any description. Even so, Kawabi of Ibe broke down so badly it felt abnormal. The mild-mannered woman became mad beast who had to band up to keep her from running to where we found Yoshitsuki's corpse. We'd already gathered it up and thrown it to the Sabanaga after all. Takumi-san kept a top of the boy's bleached hair, which he gave to Kaori-san. She instantly put it in her mouth. Through her wailing and choking, she did her best to chew and swallow it. It was a wrench, gloomy, and miserable sight, though it might have been an act of ultimate motherly love. Whatever the case, no matter what the shape, it was too late to try and bring her child back into herself, not to mention the absurd and pointless. That was how it looked like in my eyes.
宴をしよう
Can I
おやすみと
join?
よしをやったやつをどうにかしないと
His words got the attention of basically everyone present, but they didn't reach the sobbing mother and her older son, who was gently consoling her. Damn. Yoshitsuki-kun. Why did he have to go against the laws? His efforts and death had only worked to corner not just his mother but everyone else here. It was useless. He'd gotten some weird fur for us? No one, not even me, had any doubts about what we were dealing with here. A situation where everyone was desperate, acted on their own accord, and didn't know how to use their lives well was basically the worst. And apparently this line of thinking it had would foreshadow the next turn of events.
はるちゃんがどっか行った？
Shit, why was everyone in such a hurry to do the worst thing possible? Chiemi Sabizawa, Chikamochi Kamoshida, Takumi, Muro, and I went out to the search for Habu Makishi. Why is this full names? Why? Kawabi-san showed no signs of calming down, so Yasunaga stayed with her. Kyonosuke refused to come, arguing that it would be bad if there wasn't enough manpower around the dining hall, and he wasn't wrong about that. It wasn't unlikely that some fur-covered murderer or Haruchan's kidnapper was still around. To prevent any surprise attacks or accidents to split into pairs, we were given a hoe and a sickle for self-defense.
気をつけてね、二人とも。
やばいことになったら全力で叫べ低く大きい声でな
了解ですよろしくなモッチー
キリキリ働くぞ、ハッサン。
His skirt would have made the search harder for him, so he'd changed into his school uniform. It wasn't cut out for the job either, but he had no other clothes. At least it was better than a one-piece dress. He seems to enjoy wearing girls' clothing, so changing into the uniform was probably his way of showing he was serious about this. He kept his easygoing tone of voice, but it felt like the gravity in his eyes too. He might have been pretty shaken.
はるちゃん。
はるちゃーん
We walk around Yasumizu shouting until our throats become dry. We check every bush, all the patches of the tall grass and behind every tree. We even searched the water around the paddy fields, but it didn't feel like we were close to finding her.
彼女はどうしたと思う
わからん。自分のじっちゃんが死んでショックだったのかも。
いやその前だ朝から何かおかしかったろ
そうだっけ？
彼女ちょっと潔癖症なところがある
潔癖？
汚いものとか行為とかそういうのを嫌う感じ最初に会った時から そんな感じはあったかと思うんだけど。
というか休みずで一番怖がりなんだよね、はるちゃん。
Here they got, huh?
昔話の汚れとか昔からすごく怖がってたし、ある意味汚れるのを嫌がってたのかも。
なるほど。
Fear based on superstition, that made sense, but why it had suddenly gotten worse? What had happened last night?
だからはるちゃんが狼でも誰も殺したりできないと思うんだな。
君はそう考えてるのか？
はるちゃんが狼かどうかは別として、もし狼でも無理だろうって言っておる。
慎重だな。君らしくもない。
僕自身のことじゃないからね。
君とまで腹芸をやりたいわけじゃないんだ。はるちゃんについて何か考えがあるなら言ってくれないか？
何を疑ってるのか僕には分からんけど、僕の中でははるちゃんはやっすんと同じかそれ以上に大事なもので、それ以外何にも大事じゃないんだよね。だからとっとと探そうよ。
正論だ。
No matter how research, how this research, we saw no sign of her. She could have been hiding somewhere, or maybe she collapsed. But I was beginning to entertain another idea.
彼女が休みずを出た可能性は？
I asked, knowing everyone would deny the idea.
相当考えにくいけど。
霧の休みずは黄泉の国とつながってんだってばあちゃんは言ってる。だから出ようとしてもあっちに迷い込むだけだと。
まああと単純に危ないよね、山の中は。
その心情は承知した上で聞きますが、それでもあえて彼女が村を逃げ出したとした場合、彼女にどんな心境の変化があったと考えられる？
Everyone fell silent. They couldn't even imagine it. It was like their brains had stopped working. If she'd actually wandered out into danger, then we'd wasted too much time searching for her in the village. I had to hurry, so I didn't hesitate to use some big assumptions that bordered on chicanery.
彼女にとってこの村が、あるいは人が、もはや信頼できる場でないとすれば。
どういうこと？
深夜あるいは早朝に彼女は何かを目撃したのかもしれません。あるいは何らかの証拠に気づいたのかも。自分のよく知る人物が狼になって人を平然と殺した、その事実を確信できるような何かにね。
Everyone gasped.
彼女は若いし不安定なところもある。休みずは狭い社会だから、心の拠り所が失われれば居場所がないように感じられてもおかしくないし、苛烈な性格であるハルちゃんなら一念発起して脱出を試みるなんてことも考えられるんじゃないか。
説得力あるな。
しかしならどうする？諦めろっつうのか。
That was the thought of someone from Yasumizu.
僕は汚れてもいいからはるちゃんを探しに行く。
Aww. And that was the thought of someone from Yasumizu who had a few screws loose.
そんなわけで外出に抵抗感のないよそ者である僕も行きます。
Okay.
だからそれ止めるって言ったよね。
大丈夫。ヤバそうだったらすぐ引き返す。あるとすればサラナガ方面のはずないから、通学路側を探すことにする。それに大人が子供を見捨てるわけにはいかんでしょというやつで。
Yeah, there's a saying like that?
はっさん。
反論しようがないよ、そんな。
もちろん
Oh, sorry, Katana.
彼
Oh,
女がまだ
sorry.
休みずにいる可能性は十分ある。二人は引き続き集落内を探していただけますか？
任せてくれ。
危なかったら絶対逃げてよ。
はっさん、さっき言ってた話さ。
ん？どれ？
はるちゃんが何かを見たから誰も信じなくなって逃げたって話。
うん。それが？
多分本当じゃないよね。
Hopefully.
さあ、僕はあくまで可能性として言ったに過ぎないが、本当かもしれないとは思ってるよ。
例えば僕ややっすんが牙とか生やしてうろついてるのを見たとか？
まあそれも可能性だね。
なんていうかそうじゃない気がする。
ただの勘かい。
そう、ただの勘だけど、それで言えば この読み意味の宴ってさ、そういう方法で狼を見つけらんないようにできてる気がする。
Hmm?
夜出歩けないから目撃ができない。一箇所に固まって相互監視もできない。警察を呼べないから科学捜査も無理。おまけに全部霧の中で、何が何だかわからないうちにことが進んでいく。だから、そういう証拠とかじゃ、狼を見つけられない。
How could the players send people to be hanged without the slightest bit of material evidence? If you ignore the weird guardian powers, it was all Kubo's agitations, sophistry, emotional arguments, connection, popularity. Basically the power of communication.
よくわからんけど、そんな感じでちゃんとできてるんじゃない？
Nothing was certain. They were put in a dangerous argument with their only weapon being their eloquence. It was the piece of doubting, hurting, and eventually killing one another. If there was such a malice behind this, then Who's Chikamochida? I'm so bad with names.
もしや君は探偵タイプなんじゃないの？
え？いやー、それは休んだな。もしかしたら、やつはもういろいろわかってるかもしれないぞ。
Maybe he's the wolf. I'd have to talk to him then. We arrived at the mountain pass separating Yasumisa from the rest of the world. The large stones at the sides were like torii without a top. They might have a religious significance.
別に、ここから一歩でも出たらアウトなんてルールはないよね。
宴から逃げちゃダメだっていうのはあるけどね。
What happened if you run? We were going out to find Habu-chan, so we're good. Knowing the fact that Habu-chan was breaking that law, we passed between the stones. But we soon had to stop. The path was blocked by a landslide. Oh no, according to Mochi, despite being pretty rocky, the ground in the area was still strangely fragile, so landslides weren't that uncommon. Who's Mochi? Oh gosh, there had been some pretty bad rain 3 nights ago, hadn't there? If that was related to the mist appearance, it wasn't unlikely that we'd get both the mist and this landslide at the same time. Despite that, this felt just a bit too convenient. I had to consider the possibility that the people in the settlement above blocked the road to keep the Yomibito from getting through.
ハッサン、
Hmm?
これは、
There was something way more important. We found footprints in the still damp mud. That was proof that she'd passed through here. They disappeared into a small cliff that only reached up to my shoulders. She had to have climbed up and disappeared into the forest.
急ごう。
だな。
The term virgin forest was used to describe the forests that were still untouched by mankind, letting nature have completely control over it. Many of the settlers here looked imported, so that the terms probably didn't apply to this one. However, it was intended to whatsoever, so the world's natural or undeveloped definitely work. There were many ferns, saplings on the surface, a canopy of leaves, and above, a thick mist all around. It certainly didn't feel like a place humans were welcome. For better or worse, the new ferns seemed slightly trampled, indicating someone had passed through
こっ
certainly.
ちだ。
Over
気をつけな
here.
よ。彼女が迷った道でもある。
はるちゃーん。
なあ、大声出して大丈夫か？
山の基本。獣は声で逃げる。
Really? Oh yeah, I almost forgotten about the very really trout of wild animals. I realized I'd lost myself in the mood and became kinda embarrassed.
はるちゃーん！
返事してー。
Shouting over and over, we kept moving forward. She tried to follow the path, but all the cliffs and boulders in the way made her stray from it. 10 minutes later, we lost all sense of direction. Yeah, this is so dangerous. Never go to a forest. Yeah, this place was really dangerous. Could we really find her? And even if we did, we wouldn't be able to late. Would we able to get out of this forest? I was reminded of Yoshitsugu of Ibe and his cruel fate. We were about to lose yet another life. My thoughts turned to that very real possibility.